Hello students. So let us see how input output is done in Java. We shall see first, in the first phase, we will see how an input is done from keyboards and output is thrown. We had actually seen how the output is done and we'll see how the input is taken from keyboards. And secondly, we'll see how different objects that we actually create are stored into our file system. So we'll try to actually use some file input output stream and object input output streams in this video. So let us first see how an input is done using scanner class. So to use a scanner class, what we do is we need to input or import a class package that is called as util package. We have also included an IO package because we are actually intended to use file input output and object input output streams in this program. So let us see how scanner gets executed. So we need to use a scanner class and create a scanner class object. But this scanner class object is not created using the traditional new. It is created by passing a new object, not an object. In fact, it is a reference to the input stream of system class. So we write here new scanner system.in, and once we actually try to create an object of scanner class, now this object sc can be used to actually input multiple new values. Like for example, I try to input an integer. So if I now type to get an integer from keyboard, I'll write integer n is equal to, and we'll call a method next int. Now with this int, let me actually write a message before this. Enter value, and after that I try to check whether this value is actually got printed. The output is, this is n. So let us execute this. Just running it, it will be giving you a message, enter a value, and it is asking for a value to be entered. So if I enter any integer value, you'll see that that value has been entered. In case you want to input a float value, we'll write a double, and the method would be next double, and just try to execute that. Enter a value, I try to input 123.45, and the output is done. So this way you are able to get a float value to be entered. Let me show you how a string is entered. Try to input a string. The method would be only next. Let's write next only. We'll see an output of this program. This way you will be able to input a string. So suppose I write hello, and you will see that the string is stored. So this way you can enter few values of different types from the scanner class. So this is how an input is done from keyboard and the output can be stored in. In fact, I will introduce some wrapper classes here too. So like an int, we can input a wrapper class of integer n. So n, which was earlier declared as int, now that it is of integer class, let us see what happens when it tries to input an input from the keyboard and tries to store an integer which will be wrapped into the integer object. Let us compile this and let us run. I'll see the value is the same. So now that this 123 is now stored in n, and n is no longer an integer, it is an integer object of wrapper class. So there are multiple wrapper classes related with character, double, float you can use in order to store different variables. So this way, if you try to make a habit of using these wrapper classes in order to use some primitive variables, so this is treated to be as a good object-oriented practice. So now let's move on to input and output certain objects onto your file stream. So let us now introduce a new class that is called as file output stream, and create an output of a reference class and write new file output stream, and inside the brackets let's try to create an file which is named as data.txt. Now once you are able to do it, let us see what happens. Once you try to compile this, it will be providing you with some compilation error. This compilation error is unreported exception. So earlier, while studying exception handling, you have seen that there wasn't any error that was coming during the compilation time. So now that it has actually found the exception error within this statement. Now this exception is coming in, and the exception name is file not found exception, and it's saying that it must be caught or declared. So this is actually a type of unchecked exception. So in case your program or code is having any exception which is unchecked exception, so they must be caught during the compile time. So there are two ways to handle that. One way is that you can write this within this try block, and you can skip, and the name of the exception was file not found. Exception. So because this file is not there inside your file stream, so you can handle it like this. So let us compile this program again. It shows you no error. So like if you run it, if I run Java 1, it gets executed. We didn't do anything. So let us check the directory of it. If we just check, you'll find that there is a file that has been created over your file system with the name as data.txt. So because this is containing 0 byte, because we have not stored anything into it. So let us do certain operations over it. So file has been created. Now that I will create another object output stream. Object output stream, and name it as OO is equal to new object output stream by passing this fout file output stream object. Pass in here, and your object output stream is ready. Now that this object stream is ready to store any object, so we will have to use any object. In fact, in order to use objects, you can store any object into it. So let us actually store an integer object. Integer I is equal to 100. So can I store this object I into this object output stream? So we'll write what? We'll say oo dot write object, and we will pass on the object into it. What is the object name? The object name is I. Try to store it and just close it. Can we close this object output stream once the object has been written? So let us see the output of this program. Let's compile it, and there are certain errors which are coming in. But the errors are, it is saying unreported exceptions, the IO exception. So we have not actually said that there is any IO exception that is also coming in. So what needs to be done in order to handle this IO exception? The one way is you can write another catch block having this IO exception as a reference into that. Another way is that you can actually throw that exception. Suppose I don't want to handle that exception. So you can directly write throws clause. So this is exactly an exception, an example of ducking an exception. So this way, if your program needs the IO exception to be handled, so either you can create another catch block right here, having the name as IO exception. Another way, you can just throw it out. Just declare that exception and it goes out. You could do the similar way, like file not found exception 2 can be written here. So you need not put the try block right here and it will be done. So let us just compile it again. Java C. Now there is no error. Let us see how it happens. Execute the program and now see the output. Now your data.txt is containing certain bytes. That means your file has been created. So through this program, what you have done, and you created one file over your file system and stored an object into it. So I choose a very simple object, I100. So let us see right now in another experiment. So can we read this file? So suppose I don't have I forgot what exactly was written within this, right? So this file is containing an integer. That's what I know. So now how can I retrieve that data? So we can retrieve or read that file using an input stream. So you can use file input stream right now. Change the name of the reference, change the file input stream, and you will be reading the same file that is stored onto your system. Choose another input stream for object, similarly for this one, and now your object input stream is ready. Now you need not use this write object method. So because you have to read this file, so you will actually use read object function. Now once you are reading an object, so you will read it like this, and you will try to, what this read object will do, it will try to read an object from the file. So I must know what type of an object is stored. So we know earlier it was integer, so we will be actually storing the value returned by this read object, because read object actually tries to actually returns an object type of an object. So you need to typecast it of to your choice. So because we need an integer type of an object, so you will write it like this. So the method read object actually returns object type which you have typecasted, and the value will be stored in I, which you actually printed. So let us print the value returned by this read object method. So now my reading file means using input stream is ready. Now let us run this program. Now it's saying there is no input stream that is ready because we have mistakenly written F out here, which is actually named as Fn. Go to the command prompt and compile the program again and run that. There is another exception that has been reported by your read object. It is class not found exception. That means this exception is also there, that needs to be actually either thrown. So you can actually throw it right here. Class not found exception. Just try to compile it. It is also an unchecked exception. Run that, and now that it is giving you the output. Now what your program is doing, it's a program that shows you an utility where from you can actually read the files which are actually stored onto your file system. So in this video we had seen how input and output streams they are handled. So through scanner we had seen how input is done from keyboard. From file input stream we had seen how the input can be read from your files which are created inside your file system, and using your object input and output system you can also experiment with storing your own objects onto your files. So here in this example I have made use of an object that is of integer class. You may experiment it with your own user defined classes. So any object that may be of an inbuilt class or is a user defined class can be used here in order to be stored first using object output stream, and then they can be read using your input streams. So this is what is what is lying within this video. We'll meet in the next video to understand collections. So till then,